All right, so welcome back. We've talked about getting your drums sounding good at the source. We've talked about different microphones and the types. Now we're gonna get into the meat of the course and really kind of go over the essential mic placements and some ideas of where to actually put the mics. We're gonna start basically foundational. We're gonna start with the kick and just move our way all the way up to overheads and everything. So let's get started. All right, so this is CJ Metz. He's actually the owner of the studio we're in, Stone Glade Cabin, helping me out here getting some mics around the kit. So we're gonna start with the kick drum. It's often the foundation of your entire sound, so getting this right is crucial. First option, inside the drum. If your kick has a porthole, you can place the mic inside the shell. This will give you maximum attack and punch, but be careful about positioning. Too close to the beater and you get too much click. If you're too far back, you could lose attack. So the second option, which is outside the drum, I typically say about 6 to 12 inches from the porthole. This captures more of the drum's natural tone and room interaction. You get less attack, but more of the drum's fundamental tone and sustain. So putting a dynamic mic like the Beta 52A inside for attack and maybe the sub kick outside, as well as this other mic here as well. You can blend all three together. You get best of both worlds. So for the inside mic, I tend to aim it slightly off axis from the beater. You still want the attack without the plastic tick of the beater head hitting the head. For outside mics, you can always experiment with height. Sometimes pointing slightly upward captures more of that shell resonance. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the snare drum. This is often the most prominent drum in your mix, so that we have to get that right. The classic position, SM57, about 1 to 2 inches above the rim, angled down toward the center. And I also like to kind of angle it across the drum head. It adds a little extra of the tones and even picks up like if I'm using a cowbell or something like that on the bass drum. We're also miking up the bottom of the snare for that snare buzz and rattle. If you try this, make sure to flip the phase on one of the mics to avoid cancellation issues. All right, so next up is tom placement. So toms are where you can really hear the difference good mic placement makes. For rack toms, position your mic about 1 to 2 inches above the rim, angled down towards the center. Similar to the snare, but you're usually going for more body and sustain than crack. And one pro tip is the 2-finger technique. So around the entire kit, use 2 fingers to measure between the microphone and the drum head or the source, just to keep an equal amount of distance throughout. Floor toms can be a little tricky because of their size and position. Sometimes coming in from the side works better than from above, especially if you're dealing with cymbal bleed. The angle is critical for controlling bleed. Position your tom mics so they're naturally pointed away from cymbals and other drums. This just helps keep each tom mic focused on its drum. All right, so next up is overhead placement. There's a lot of different options and different ways to set up overheads. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the spaced pair technique. And of course, overheads might be the most important mics on your entire kit. They capture the overall balance, the cymbals, and the spatial relationships of your drums. So the spaced pair is probably the most common overhead technique. What you want to do is position 2 mics above your kit, roughly from the same distance as your snare drum. This is going to be the crucial piece for phase coherence. So what we'll do, once we tune everything, I'm going to measure the distance between each overhead to the snare drum. If one is significantly closer than the other, you'll end up getting phase issues that can make your kit sound weird and hollow. Also, height affects the balance between drums and cymbals. Lower overheads gives you more drum presence, higher gives you more cymbal wash and room sound. Most of the time, 3 to 4 feet above the kit is a good starting point. Another technique is called XY positioning. You can use 2 mics positioned very close together, typically above the snare, angled outward. This eliminates phase issues completely because both mics are essentially at the same point. It's up to you. Try different techniques. Spaced pair gives you width, stereo imaging, XY gives you more focused, kind of almost like a mono image. Also, if your cymbals are overpowering your drums in the overheads, try lowering the mics or angling them more towards the drums. If you need more cymbal, raise them up or angle toward the cymbals. Remember, overheads capture your room sound too. So in a great room like this, that's a beautiful thing. In a problematic room, you might want to get the overheads closer to minimize room pickup. Okay, so up next, what we're gonna do, CJ's showing us how to set up room mics. And there's a handful of different ways to do this, depending on if you're in a studio like this or in a bedroom. The creativity really shines in this point. So what he's doing now is he's setting up condensers, 2 short kind of close up to the kit. And then we're gonna be putting 1 up in the loft. And if you're in a home studio, let's say, you don't have, be creative. You can put 1 in the bathroom, put 1 down the hall. Let's say you're in the storage building and you're recording your drums there, put 1 down the hall from there. There's a lot of different things, but in a beautiful studio like this, the room is almost its own instrument. So we really want to capture the sounds of the space. And so we're using, again, 2 close-up room mics and 1 up in the loft.